So again, we kind of saw the new interface with the version 11, and again, what we've done is we've enhanced the user interface. We've enhanced the capabilities with again that the ability to see that. We've improved the iconage. We've changed the construct of the base system itself. So now what we're looking at is a paradigm that's more accurate to what you want to do, more task-based. So we have a verb. We're going to explore. What are we going to explore? We're going to explore the reports. We're going to, so we have a verb and a noun concept here, right? So again, what do I want to do? I want to model. What do you want to model? An application, or, do you want to configure something? I want to manage. What do you want to manage? I want to manage credentials. I want to manage the appliance configuration and so on. So again, we've tried to make it as easy as possible. We still have all the dashboards that we had before, plus some new ones, and we can quickly take a look at what that interface has changed to, right? So again, if I go home and we see the standard interface, but we see new icons. These color schemes could be changed to meet your requirements. But again, a cluster now looks like a cluster. Different things have been enhanced within the system. We can still drill into any of these individual discrete devices. I can still change my dashboard to my preferred dashboard, and it remembers, again, because the menus are sticky, it remembers my preference so that the next time I log in, this is the dashboard I'm going to get. Again, the example of that noun verb, I want to explore data, I want to explore reports, I want to explore, whatever it happens to be. I want to model devices or applications or software. So what's the difference between an application and software? Software might be a piece of software running on a machine that we don't recognize, and you want to quickly model it. Well, you can click on this button, and it will go in and it will say, well, what do you want to create? Well, I want to create something based on an executable that I found running on a machine that you didn't recognize. So again, we can very quickly go in and create those software instances to be able to model. Devices, same thing. So there may be SNMP devices running in your environment that we don't recognize, but you want to be able to account for those. You can import SNMP information into the device, into the appliance, so that we can then recognize those devices. Maybe it's something the manufacturer just put out and we haven't built a pattern for it yet. You can still get that information in by importing the standard information. So that's kind of the way the interface has changed. Again, I can still go in and I can look at any of the data that we've captured, broken down by different contexts and so on. So we've gone to a lot of trouble to make this as easy as we can moving forward. Again, managing, right? So what do I want to manage? I want to manage credentials, right? We're going to come right back to this screen because there's an important new paradigm in the credentials management as well. In previous versions of ADDM, I had to have one credential for Windows. I had to have a credential for my Linux devices, or I could share those between Linux or Unix and Windows if it was a common credential. But if it was a WebM credential for my storage, if it was a SNMP version 3 credential of some sort, I couldn't share those between those different areas. I couldn't have a vCenter and a Windows credential be the same. Well, now what we give you is the ability to create a credential and have it associated with all the possibilities that might be out there that credential could log into a device. And again, we've collapsed the credential management for the databases and for these different things. Now, again, looking at the different credentials, the different types, we can still bound them by an IP address or an IP address range. So that doesn't change, but we've given you the flexibility to change a password one time instead of 50 times, and that's a huge, huge step forward. Again, next on that list is the new visualizations. You kind of saw that as I was going through the collaborative application mapping, the ability to change the views, to remove and add things from the views, be able to save those views, and so on. The other thing that we've done is we've made it easier to troubleshoot device discovery failures. So you'll notice there's now on the discovery screen itself a list that shows us how many successes we had, how many transient failures we've had. Now, a transient failure means that for some reason this credential failed, but it hasn't always failed, and maybe it was just this one time that it didn't work, right? So maybe a machine was offline or not available or what have you. If I have credential failures, I'm going to call those out immediately, and I'll show you what those credentials are, and we'll be able to go through quickly and fix the credential issues that we're having based on the devices that we're trying to connect to. And again, the ability to see any credential that has aged out, i.e., I have a credential in here, but there's nothing out there that's responding with this credential. So this credential hasn't worked for X number of days, X number of weeks, months, whatever it happens to be, and I'm going to configure that as an aged out credential. And again, be able to go in and keep those clean, keep them fresh, and understand what those look like. And that's really the end of my spiel. I'm happy to spend some time, answer any questions you might have. Again, you can find more information on the BMC website or by contacting any of the RightStar representatives that you're comfortable working with. And with that, Dick, do we have any questions?
Yeah, we sure do, Joe. And hey, excellent job. I'm really impressed with this new version. I like the look and I like the feel of it. Plus, functionality. When you were going through the storage portion, when you went through the information about the processors, EMC, vCenter, what just jumps out is how can anybody else keep up with what BMC has been able to do? So let me just ask that as a question. I know there's some competitors out there, but I can't believe that anybody has that same level of functionality that BMC does. Would you agree with that?
Well, so I would be biased, but I would absolutely agree. And
yeah.
So would several analyst organizations. There are, and again, on our website, there's some links to some very specific. Typically, a Gartner or somebody doesn't look at the discovery and dependency mapping as a separate entity, but we're starting to see analysts paying attention to this space. And there's been a couple of analyst reports, and you can access those on our website, that talk about the superior capabilities of this product. Again, if we go back and we look at the top-down modeling approach, right? So the top-down modeling approach says that I have to start at the top and discover something, and then from there I'm going to discover the next layer down, and from there I'm going to follow a specific path and follow the next layer down, and the next layer down, and so on until I get the whole model. Well, what that leaves out is you might miss a few things, or there might be things missing from that model. And what we're doing is we're taking a different approach. We're saying you can start anywhere. Why? Because ADDM has gone out and captured everything there is to know about your data center and has provided you that as a resource so that you can start in the middle, you can start at the bottom, you can start at the top, and still see everything associated with that business model. And that's a key differentiator between us and anybody else.
Yeah. There's a question that came in, and it basically says, hey, I'm new to BMC Discovery. Is there an agent needed to be installed on devices, or will the tool crawl our network and then return information? And I think it's the latter, right? But one obvious question, would be, well, how do you get all that information without having agents then?
So, again, it's a very sophisticated discovery engine that has what we call pattern recognition libraries built in that understand, again, 3,500 different types of hardware that could be running in your environment, hundreds and hundreds of different software titles, as well as thousands of configurations for those softwares. So it is agentless. There is a caveat, and I'm going to throw this out there. It runs on a simplified Linux kernel, so we do require one device in your environment running a Windows OS to run as a proxy for executing WMI calls, because that's something that they haven't figured out how to do with Linux yet. So we leverage a proxy to execute WMI calls. Now they're very small. They're, again, they're able to be captured remotely with the right level of credentials. And that's basically what the whole thing's about. It's about having the right level of credentials or the right set of commands associated with it. We all know Linux and Unix have certain commands that you have to have privilege to execute. And if you don't have that privilege, you either need to do an SU, which nobody does, or you have to be able to modify the scripts that go through and capture this information and insert maybe a sudo or something of that nature. And we support that functionality as well. So absolutely everything other than that WMI call is done through an agentless technology.
Okay. And that sort of reminds me, let me ask another question about mapping, because we have gone in, we have ADDM or Discovery customers where we've gone in and we've actually overestimated how much effort it would take to get this up and running, and so we get the job done sooner than we thought we would. And I think one of the reasons that we get done sooner is it has to do with application mapping. Could you, because I think the product will map certain things pretty well without any manual intervention. When do you need manual intervention to do some specific mapping then?
So I'll be honest with you, most of the time, to go beyond what I showed here today is typically in a multi-tenant environment. And you want to have repeatable patterns that will recreate the same software model for multiple different tenants without having to go in and individually map those different tenants. That's one instance. Another instance might be a custom-built application where, again, we don't have the right depth of pattern to recognize the software, or maybe it's a new type of new piece of software that we haven't built the patterns for yet. But typically, the whole paradigm of application mapping has changed with this model because, again, we're capturing not just the discrete parts that go to delivering a service like Exchange, but we're capturing all of the intercommunications between those areas. And again, I can give you an example of what that might look like. If I just type in Exchange, and I know I'm deviating here, but I'm going to go to a software instance. I'm just going to pick these guys here that all seem to be running on this MCR host identifier. So we're just going to grab these, and I'll show you a really neat feature that you would never be able to do prior with our last release. So we've got all the MCRs. I'm going to come up here. I'm going to hit Visualize. And what we'll see on this direct force map is we will see two discrete areas. Actually, I have to change my layout to the direct force. We'll see two discrete areas. Now, you didn't see this before. And again, I'm going to slim this down by taking away some of the candidate software. And we'll see that now, if I kind of draw a line right down the middle here, you can see there's really two different things. So what do I have over here? Well, I've got my Exchange environment over here, but over on this other side, linked is my Microsoft linked environment. So what I've got in this view is two discrete applications that interact with each other. And again, the load balancer information and so on. Do I still have the ability to create a service or an application model via the old mechanism through CAM? Absolutely. So if I decide that I want to go in and use the old method to build out these applications, we can still do that. But again, 90% of our customers tell us the depth that we're providing in that last view is more than sufficient for what they need. I hope I didn't go too far with that answer.
Yeah, no, I think just to cut to the chase, what you're saying is that the product is less labor intensive than ever, right? That you can really get this thing up and running in a very short amount of time, and that it's not really necessary to spend a huge amount of time doing detailed application mapping because you don't have to. Okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that, Dick. I forgot.
Yeah.
You guys, you guys are going to lose some money.
No, that's all right. Yeah, no, it's all right. We'd rather have them spend the money on something else.
Right.
So anyway, I had one other question that I thought about, and that is we had Well, I guess the question started when I went to a CIO conference last month, and one of the things that really came out of that was all the CIOs were saying, we're trying to get all these applications out in the cloud, for obvious reasons in terms of reliability. Now they don't have to fool with the applications anymore, and yet last week. We had an experience where we use an HR application. It's a cloud-based application, and they were actually down for over 24 hours. So for a period of 24 hours, we couldn't get to this particular database, which was a big inconvenience. Now, how does how does BMC Discovery play in with these cloud-based applications? Probably not very well, because once it's down, it's down. There's no real thing that you could view anyway. Right, you just know that it's not working.
That's very true. However, there are going to be paths and trails that lead us to that application if it's external to our organization. Now, depending on whether or not there's breadcrumbs inside your data center or inside a private cloud, or certain public cloud vendors will allow us to come in and discreetly discover a client's devices and software. Other cloud providers are a little less friendly to having somebody come in with a product like ADDM for reasons of security, and they just don't trust that we can contain it, right? But could it help in a situation like that? It really depends on the application itself. In a case where there's two pieces and parts to that, maybe your VPN connection to that hosting service was a problem, or something that was having an issue, your VPN server that provides that private tunnel. Could we have captured, or could we have understood that piece of the information? Absolutely. I can build an application model even if the software doesn't exist in my data center. I can define what that model should look like, and then have the associated things that I do have as part of that model as well. So I can at least go to the point of, going through this switch to this VPN server and understanding whether something's up or down. Now, if I had gotten something from my monitoring tools that said, hey, this process just stopped on this VPN server, I could immediately gone and done a root cause analysis and known what applications would be affected by that failure, or if that switch had gone bad that the VPN server was connected to. I would know all of the applications that could be potentially affected based on that switch not being available. That's the level of information that ADDM pulls together and provides you in one place.